Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We appreciate your attendance today, and welcome to this genomic seminar that Dr. Tom Lawler from the Holstein Association is going to speak with us today. We're proud Select Sires to sponsor this event. My name is Jeff Ziegler, Genomic Program Manager at Select, and I learn each and every time I listen to Tom give talks in the different venues that he has. Many of you know Tom very well. Hopefully you do. He's been a 25-year veteran of the industry and a great resource for AI over the many years that he's been with the Holstein Association and with USDA and in the assistant professor role as well at the University of Connecticut. Of course, was a Lush Award winner from some of the research he's done through the years, and that's a very astute honor for someone in his position. And I understand the venue today also works for some continuing education credits for the American Registry of Professional Animal Scientists and American Association of Veterinary State Boards. So it serves Tom's time today serves in many roles, and we appreciate your attendance. We ask you to silence your cell phones if you would, so we don't have that distraction as we go along. And with that, Tom, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate Select Sires sponsoring the talk. It's very nice. I was trying to put together things for this talk that I thought you all might be thinking about and want to ask. So, you know, when genomic testing's been around for several years, I know that I see many familiar faces, and I know that a lot of folks are already using it to some degree. But it keeps advancing, and more people are joining in. And so maybe the talk is probably geared a little bit towards the people that have been on the sidelines and thinking about, well, how can I use it, and where is this technology going? And it's also really nice to be giving this talk here in Madison. And Madison's a lot of fun. You know, you come out here, and it's not so much just seeing the cows or the exhibits. It's the whole experience and kind of getting updated on everything that's going on and the networking and hearing the buzz. And so here's some things that I found interesting. Columbia Pictures, employing a sophisticated computer-based analysis. Sony Pictures, for anyone who has ever dreamed of taking on the system. Roger Ebert, mind-numbing statistical theories, war between intuition and statistics. What the number crunchers demonstrated is that a computer can assemble a team better than human instinct. And the Wall Street Journal, never before have statistics added up to such electrifying entertainment. Finally, statistics is sexy and everybody is talking about it. Unfortunately, all those reviews were for the new movie Moneyball. People are talking about statistics. Statistics, as you know, is a very big part of the genomic selection. So I think that, you know, in a few more years, we're going to see another movie that's going to be on genomic selection. And we have Brad Pitt already in this movie. So I don't know. I was thinking maybe George Clooney could play me in the genomic selection. So genomic testing continues to improve, and one of the latest things, which is just coming along, is this 6K chip. So we'll talk a little bit about that and its introduction. But also, if you remember, just a couple of years ago, the 50K chip was $250, so it's dropped in price by half already. And this 6K chip is going to be introduced. We expect to have some animals already tested and evaluated come November, so that's terrific. And what will happen is the 6K will be introduced. It'll be basically at the same price at the 3K, and the 3K will be eliminated. So anyone that's testing in the future, you'll be testing on the 6K and at the same price as you're testing on the 3K, which is very desirable. And if you look at the different chips, so we have 3,000 markers on a chip, 6,000 markers on a chip, 50,000, and the high density is the 770,000. And the way that you can get a feel for which one is the most important and which one should you be using is you kind of look at these reliability values. And this would be for a trait like milk production. And the problem that people needed to decide when they're going to do a genomic testing program before was whether to make the jump from a 3K at $43 to a 50K at $125. You'd get an increase of 10% in reliability if you just had the sire genotyped, or if both the sire and maternal grandsire was genotyped, you'd get a 7% increase. So the first decision people had to make was that worthwhile? Should I spend the extra money? If I spend the extra money, will I get better information? Can I make better decisions from it? And now, with the 6K coming along at the same price as the 3K, everything drops pretty much. The difference in reliability is very marginal. When this is at $43 and this is at $125, pretty much the majority of folks are going to be using that 6K chip. So as far as trying to decide which chip you want to be ordering, I think it's kind of gotten to a point now where that decision is made. It's going to be the 6K for most people. For those that are interested in the very highest elite genetics, those will still be done on the 50K, so elite females will be, some elite females will be done at that. And then, of course, a lot of the bulls will be done on this high density. So if you look at the usage right now, we do see that currently, in the last 7 months, that most of them were done on the 3K, 20% on the 50K, and then we'd have a number of animals that would be initially tested on the 3K, and then the evaluation would be good, so they'd be upgraded or retested at a higher level. So these are pretty much animals where the evaluation came back very nice initially on the 3K, and they decided to go up to the 50K. And then if we look at the most elite animals, we see most of the genotyping is done on the 50K. And what typically will happen is these 3K animals, as I said, they will go up to be re-genotyped again or re-evaluated on the 50K. And then we do have one animal that's imputed, and what that means is that she gets her genomic evaluation totally from her progeny and relatives. So this animal was identified, she's quite elite, and she also would probably be redone on a 50K. But so you wonder, well, what's the difference? Why are people using the 3K and some people using the 50K? Basically, the 3K is for screening and more for commercial applications. So here's the two-way that most people are. Did I skip a slide? Okay, I skipped this slide. So when we get the genomic report, for those that have received this looks very familiar, but if you haven't seen it, what typically happens is that you would have an animal, say its pedigree TPI or net merit dollar would be 440. You do the genomic evaluation, and then you find out whether the animal is better or worse than its pedigree indicates. So this is an example of an animal that's much better. So she came up just about 200 TPI points higher. It's $120 net merit higher. So what that tells us is that she got an exceptional set of genes from her parents. So this is very good information. And what you do is you'd be testing a lot of animals. On average, they'd stay the same. Some will go up and some will go down. So the idea is to identify the ones that are better than you expected and maybe do something extra with them. For example, put them in an embryo transfer program, or those that are came out lower than you expected and maybe are candidates for culling. So in either way, you're trying to use the genomic information to move ahead, to improve your bottom line. So the two biggest applications, as I mentioned, is picking elite genetics and identifying low replacements. And of course, the idea is to use the genomic information to make a decision one way or the other, improve the financial situation, and basically allow the genomic testing to give you a jump on the competition, whether it be financial in the high merit or identifying which ones by culling would increase your profitability. As far as when you should genomic test or which animals are being genomic tested, almost all of them are young animals, calves and yearlings, so 73% are less than 15 months of age. And this just keeps increasing. When we look at the more recent evaluations, a higher percentage are these young animals, and that's really what you want to concentrate. And I'll explain more why that's the case. But genomic testing is really a young animal technology. Now, when the genomic testing first came out, what would typically happen is that you'd get information from Holstein or maybe from DHI. It would rank young animals by their genetic merit. And then you'd see, like, one here has a TPI with a G, so she's been genomically tested. Another one has an M, which means that the sire is a foreign sires, has a multiple country evaluation, and here's one that's not been tested. So the idea is to present this to the farmers, and they would say, well, here's a very high ranking animals based on pedigree TPI value. Maybe I should genomic test that animal. So that was the first, probably like a year ago or a year and a half ago, this was the process. Farmers would receive the information, and then they would start cherry picking which ones they thought they should genomically test, and typically it was the ones that were high genetic pedigree value or maybe a unique pedigree. What's interesting is now when I look at these same reports like a year later, I see a difference in herds. Some herds are using a tremendous amount of genomic testing, and other herds are using very little. So if you're looking to go after the elite genomics, you really need to have a plan on what you're going to be doing and implementing it routinely and being kind of aggressive in your breeding program. So what these herds that are aggressively trying to get the elite genetics, what they're doing is they would do that initial screen that I talked about, and a good criteria for making a kind of a first selection is to look at the TPI value or net merit. So a TPI value of $1,700 or a net merit dollars of $300, that would put you in the top 25%. So by genomically testing them, you have a pretty good chance of finding an elite animal. It's not to say that you shouldn't genomically test anyone below that, but the odds really drop off dramatically when the pedigree information is less. So they would identify these elite animals to genotype, and then from the ones that come back very high, what happens is they breed or flush them to high genetic bulls, and these tend to be the young heifers. So that's why most of the testing is done 15 months of age or earlier. And then, of course, when these animals have offspring, they quickly genotype the offspring of them, select the highest one, and repeat the process. And if we look at our herds in the Holstein Association, we see several hundred herds already involved in this kind of process where they're really going after those elite genetics and having a breeding program like this that routinely implements genomics on a regular basis. So that would be a point that I want to make, is that if you're interested in breeding elite genetics, you really need to think of it more as a program that you're going to be routinely doing, as opposed to a program where you're getting reports back and cherry picking certain animals and doing them occasionally. It's very hard to be competitive with that procedure as opposed to being committed and going right after it. And you can see this happen when you look at the top 200. You already see that we have not 200 different owners, but 91 different owners. And 14 of those owners have 3 or more of the animals that are in the top 200. So the breeders that are going after elite genetics are very focused. They have a plan that helps them identify the genomics earlier. And then as soon as they find these elite animals, they quickly repeat the process and are starting to pull ahead, as that slide said, jump ahead of the competition. Now the other application, which probably more people can get involved, is in the using genomics for culling decisions. You want to genomic test a bunch of animals. Which ones should you keep? Which ones should you cull? This was a nice article in Dairy Herd Management, and it discussed that very nicely, and I have some updated information that hopefully you'll find interesting. Probably the easiest way to present looking at the benefits and what happens when you genomic test is to look at animals where you have no information at all. And that'll be the first example that I give you. So the idea is if I have a bunch of heifers, should I genomically test them to figure out which ones should I keep as replacements and which ones should I cull? And what I mean by should I genomically test, is it financially a sound decision to do that, or is it just something that you're doing to improve your herd, but it's really not going to have an immediate payback, or will it? So that's the question. Will it have an immediate payback? Is it cost effective? Is now the time to get involved in genomic testing? And also future gains, because not only is there an immediate payback in that these animals are superior or these animals are below average, but their descendants will also have a contribution on your herd. So we'll be talking about immediate payback and also the future gains from the future descendants. So this is, I pulled this example off in May of this year. It was 46 herds that showed up, 46 animals I should say, and they had no sire and dam information. I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. Here they are, they genomically test them, they don't know who the sire is, they don't know who the dam is. Is this a very cost-effective thing to do, and did they spend their money wisely? So this is what you would have if you looked at, their net merit dollars. You have nothing. You really don't know anything. So this is the easiest way to show whether it makes sense to genomic test them or not. You get the genomic results, and it pulls them apart. We now find out that we have an animal that had a PTA for net merit of just about $300, so the genetic merit is about $600. And likewise, we had one for where the PTA would be minus $300, or the breeding value genetic merit is minus $600. So now you have very good information on these animals. You have some indications of which ones you want to keep. You have an indication of which ones you want to cull. They spent $43 each to get this information. So the real question is, was that a good use of their money? One way to answer that is, okay, let's say we're going to, we did this, the owner did this, and he's going to cull 5 animals. So if you cull these bottom 5 animals, what happens is the remaining animals, we had 46, the remaining 41, their average genetic merit for net merit is 5250 higher. So we have 46 animals. We expect the 41 that we've selected to return to us $2,153. The amount that it cost was 46 animals at $43, so the cost was $1,978. So the return on that investment is good, is a positive value. So yes, that was, even though it seemed bizarre when the information came in, here's animals that have no sire, no dam. They got very good information. They can use that to make culling decisions, and it's cost effective to make that decision. So if you're selecting, if you actually have the opportunity to cull 10 as opposed to cull 5, the numbers look even better. So rather than increasing the average $52, the ones that you're keeping is $99 more. So if you have the opportunity to cull harder, it improves your profitability. So here we see we had 46 animals. The cost stays the same. The 36 animals that we decided to keep now generates $3,571 worth of profit. So the profitability is even better under this scenario. So as you have the opportunity to cull more, profitability increases. Yes?
I'm trying to figure out what you mean by profitability increases. How does it increase by getting rid of some feed costs, labor costs, costs of keeping those animals that you should have culled, or what?
Right. Yeah, all of those, and also the animals that you're keeping is going to produce, in this case, $1,600 more than the animals that you got rid of. So
So you're not
Right, exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
that would be an additional to that.
Right. Yep.
This with the 3K now?
This is, right, all results that I'm presenting are 3K. Yep. Now, in the example that I gave you, it was the simplest example where there was no sire and dam information, and we weren't able to identify who the sire was. But what's interesting with the technology is now we're at the point where often we can tell you who the sire is. So previously, the example was we didn't know who the sire was. But what happens is that basically, if the sire is genotyped, we'll be able to tell you who the sire of the animal is. So in the commercial settings, about half the time, when you send in a DNA sample on a calf who you don't know who the sire is, half the time we'll be able to tell you who that sire of that calf is. And to me, that's quite amazing, and it's been something that we've been hoping that we could do, and I remember hearing that question 20 years ago. I'd like a technology where if I have a cow out on the pasture and I pull some hair off of her, you can tell me who the sire of that cow is. Well, we're now at the point where, well, we can half the time. And we'll be able to do that at a higher and higher frequency as time goes by, because more of the sires will have been genotyped, so that's just going to increase over time. In the case where we do have correct sire, or we do have sire recorded, these are typically more elite genetics, and also more use of AI bulls. And when we have a conflict, what we find is that 90% of the time, if there's a incorrect sire written down for who the sire of that cow is, 90% of the time we can tell you who the correct sire is. So this is very nice, and it's going to add to the profitability of the situation, and it's only going to increase over time. So what we have here is that these are the example I gave you earlier when you had an unknown sire, but you couldn't identify who the sire is. Half the time we will be able to identify who the sire is, and the profitability is much, much better. So really, in the case where you have unknown parents, it's going to be about $600 difference between the added revenue from the animals that you're keeping versus the cost that it took to get that information. So in the case of having animals where you don't know who the sire and dam is, it's very profitable to be genotyping those animals and getting genomic information back that has not only the genomic prediction, but half the time the pedigree information on those animals. So in the no pedigree situation, to me, it's a no-brainer. You really should be genomically testing them. The information you're getting back more than pays for the cost of the genotyping test. Now, what about for the many folks that have good records, they do have pedigree information, how beneficial is genomic testing then? You already have the pedigree information. It is giving you some initial prediction. Is it still cost-effective to be genomically testing these animals, particularly from a herd replacement point of view? So what we have here is basically the parent averages, which spreads them out. It gives you a good starting point as far as the genetic merit of these animals. And what you'd like to do with the genomic testing, through the genomic testing you'd like to do, is be able to get a more accurate read on the genetic merit of these animals. So the results come back, and what you find is that some animals have lower genetic merit than their pedigree would have predicted, and some animals have higher genetic merit than their pedigree would have predicted. So this is really a refinement. If we were to average all these out, we'd find that it comes back just about zero change. On an animal-by-animal basis, some go up, some go down. And so what the genomic does is now we can identify with more accuracy which are the ones that we should be keeping and which are the ones that we should be culling. So here are the ones that we would now identify as the ones that we should be culling, and the rest of the ones we should be keeping. Again, this is 46 animals. You get rid of the lowest 5. So if you're looking to cull low-end animals, the genomic information does give you a better prediction. And we see that because we would have been getting rid of the bottom 5 here. Now we identify 2 that we actually should be getting rid of, and we should be keeping these animals here. The other thing is that what you notice is that still all of the decisions are coming from this bottom end. So the animals that start off with a high pedigree value, as far as a culling point of view, we're still going to keep all these animals. So you would ask, does it make any sense to genotype those animals? Can I save money by not genotyping them? And the answer is yes. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at different scenarios as far as herd management, as far as selecting replacements, culling animals, and which breeding plan, genomic testing plan would be the most profitable, which would give you the greatest profitability. And we did that in conjunction with Kent Weigel at the University of Wisconsin, also with William Herring from Pfizer. And we looked at the expected gains in lifetime net merit from different genomic testing programs involving cows, heifers, and calves. And this is a paper that we submitted to the Journal of Dairy Science. So this is simulated research where we looked at a 100-cow herd. Again, all the tests are 3K. We assumed $40, which because it's easier to work with $40 than $43. We included the genetic trend that's occurring in our population. All the genetic parameters are based on the current U.S. Holstein population. We did assume that there is some error rate in sire identification. People will tell you that this is the sire of the animal, but about 15% of the time that's in error. So genomic testing will help you. And then we just replicated it 100 times so we would be confident in the results that we got. And the strategies basically is whether you should be genotyping the whole herd, whether you should genotype just the elite animals, or maybe you should genotype only those on the low end. So if you're looking for elite animals, obviously you should concentrate on the top end. I mentioned the top 25%, and that pretty much holds true. But then what percentage of animals on the low end should you be genotyping to have the most profitable genomic testing plan? So we look at our return on investment, and I'll report it in 2 ways. One is an immediate payback, and the other is a future payback. And the future payback is the one that a lot of geneticists say you should look at, because not only by selecting these animals are you going to be seeing increased performance from them because they have higher genetics, but you also see increased performance by a milking daughter or granddaughter or great-granddaughter. So it carries through into the future descendants. So you can calculate that with a discount rate of 5%. And so it's just 2 ways of looking at payback, immediate versus future. And the immediate is a more conservative value. The future is probably a more realistic value. So through the simulation results, we got the same conclusion as we got from what I did just looking at the actual genomic tested animals. But for heifer and yearling calves, all the strategies show that it's definitely beneficial to be genomically testing those animals, particularly when you have no pedigree information. I mean, it's kind of like a no-brainer. You don't know anything about this heifer. You do the genomic test. Half the time you're going to be getting pedigree information on them, who the sire, who the maternal grandsire is, and a prediction of the genetic merit. If you call the bottom end, it definitely pays for itself. So on these cases, and I get asked this a lot because a lot of people are going around getting heifers. They don't know much about their pedigree information, and they want to know whether they should genomically test them. And the answer is definitely yes. And they're going to sell some at a higher price, and then probably what they're going to do is try to sell the ones that they're getting rid of at the same price that they would have initially, so that those on the receiving end have to be wondering, gee, are these heifers have they already been genomic tested? And is somebody selling me the rejects, or I need to investigate more into just exactly what I'm being sold here? So this is a case when we do have heifers with a known sire. We'll look at a 20% culling rate, and we have two different scenarios. One is when you would genotype all of your heifers. The other is when you would only genotype the bottom half of your heifers. So the cost would be $40 if you genotype all of them, or an average of $20 if you genotype just half of them. And the main numbers to look at is what's the difference between the revenue versus the cost, $29 here versus $21 here. So even though the revenue is higher on the ones using the full genotyping, it also costs a lot more money to do that. So this is a much more profitable genomic testing plan when you have 20% culling, known sires. And it does pay for itself, and it is recommended. So here we have three levels of culling: 30%, 20%, 10%. And if you look at the profitability here, this is the difference between the revenue and the cost. You see that the best genotyping program is the one for the 10 and the 20% culled. You can justify spending genotyping dollars on genotyping the bottom 50%. If you have the opportunity to cull up to 30% or more, then it really does pay to genotype all of those heifers and cull the bottom 30%, keep the higher ones, and it's a cost-effective program. If you're not able to cull at 30%, say 20%, 10%, etc., you're much better off focusing on the low end, genotyping them, and deciding which ones to cull from the low end. So the key points from that slide is that if culling opportunity is low, you want to target the low end animals and only genotype them. And then as your opportunity to cull increases, you'll see that you'll get an increase in your return on investment. And I have that illustrated in this slide. So here we have three scenarios. One is culling 10%, culling 20%, and then culling 40%. Of course, 40% is assuming you're using sex semen. Without sex semen, you're probably more down like the 10% level. So at the 10% level, it does pay to be genotyping 50 out of 100 or 50% of those heifers, culling the bottom 10. The added profit for each selected animals would be $14. 14 times 90 that you kept is $1,260. So it really does appear that it is a cost-effective program to be using genomic testing when you're making culling decisions. If you're able to cull even more, the profitability goes up, and then using a group of technologies allowing a very high culling level increases the profitability even more. So genotyping cows. Now for cows, the way to think about genomic information is that that's exactly what it is information on whether this cow is genetically superior or inferior. So it's just one more source of information. And for cows, you have other sources of information, the actual milk recorded records, reproductive performance, conformation scores. So all of that is adding information on giving you a prediction of the genetic merit of that animal. So on the milk cows, genomic testing is not as valuable as for the calves and for the heifers. And that's why we're seeing, 80% of the animals that are being genomic tested tend to be the animals with no other sources of information other than pedigree data. So on cows, the genomic testing really does drop off quite a bit. So on the future gains, if we look at profitability there, here's a situation where we have 20% culling. This is the one exception when you have no pedigree information. If you're looking at the calves and the yearlings, it does pay to genotype all of them. But then when you go to having a known sire or known sire and dam, the profitability does decrease, and you should be genomically testing just the bottom half of those animals. But in all cases, you see that there is a positive profitability. So the return revenue that you get from having better genetics exceeds the cost that you would put into the genomic testing. So the genomic testing has now gotten to a point where it does seem as though it's does make sense to be doing routinely on a commercial basis for large herds for the purpose of picking replacements. The numbers work out both through the study at the University of Wisconsin and also the study that we see when we actually look at the genomic results that are coming in. Those are the future gains. So of course, that some of the profitability is dependent upon the descendants that you have. And if you look more at the immediate return, the numbers are lower, but still positive for many scenarios, where you see more of a break even and maybe a little bit of, you'd call this not necessarily a loss, but an investment in those genetics, is that it will take you a longer amount of time before you see a payback on those genomic testing costs. But definitely for the calves and yearlings, it does, in all cases, whether you know the pedigree or whether you know the pedigree or you don't know the pedigree, it does seem like a wise thing to be doing is to having genomic testing as a part of your routine management procedure. So in kind of summarizing on how you can put this into your own herd management protocol is if you are looking for elite genetics, what we're recommending is first you sort on those parent average, and then you would be screening on the, which will soon be here, the 6K, and then the most elite animals that you have, most people would be validating with the 50K. And for the herd management involving culling decisions of replacements, as I said, the young animals, it does seem to be profitable on a number of different scenarios. But if you have 10 to 20% opportunity to cull, you want to be focusing on the bottom end of your animals. It doesn't pay to genomically test all of them. If you can get the culling opportunity up to 30% or higher, then it does pay to genomic test all of them. On the cows, it does, you can argue that it is profitable to be doing that, but that profitability is really dependent upon future descendants coming into the herd and having better genetics and paying for themselves over a longer period of time. So on cows, it's more of an investment. On the young animals, it's a direct profitability where you can justify doing it today and you'll have an immediate payback. As far as the future, I think genomic testing will only improve for a number of reasons. All these results were on the 3K. The same analysis, if we did it on the 6K, is going to look a lot better. So that's good. If you've been a student of genomics, you've noticed that the reliability and the accuracy and the stability has been improving each run. And the reason is that as you genotype more animals, they become more stable, more reliable, more animals in the reference population. And then also just with the genomic technology, first we had the 50K, we then had the 3K, which was nice tool. We now have the 6K. So that technology continues to improve. Now, genomic testing is not going to replace regular performance testing. As a matter of fact, we definitely are reliant upon it. So I need to emphasize that each new generation needs to have actual performance information coming in, whether it be DHI records or confirmation records or health records, in order to recalibrate the genomic predictions. So that's necessary. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't give much appreciation to USDA Animal Improvement Program labs, because they're the ones that have been calculating all these genomic predictions and doing a lot of good work, and we're definitely reliant on their past work and future work. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much. Yes?
Sorry if I missed the point someplace, but you suggested the bottom end for culling, for example, 100 heifers. What might be the bottom end? So a good round figure, the number that genomic will test for culling.
So if you have 100 heifers and your typical culling rate is about 10%, then you know you're going to get rid of 10 of those 100. The analysis that we've done here, we've looked at, you can justify genomically testing 50, the bottom 50 out of those 100, but we don't have it summarized here, but probably even a more profitable genomic testing plan would be to genomic test the bottom 30%. So that's what I found is genomically testing the bottom 30%, culling the bottom 10% is the most profitable program at the 10% culling level. And then as you have the opportunity to cull more, so say you're using 6 semen and you can get your culling rate up to 30%. And by culling, I don't mean getting rid of the animals. You can also interpret that as using some of those animals to breed to beef bulls or to low-end genetic bulls. So you're not really culling as in getting rid of them, but making a different decision on how to breed them as opposed to the top 70%, where you're breeding them for dairy replacements. Yeah.
Is there a way to identify animals that, for instance, I bought some cows and the sires didn't turn out to be the one they're supposed to be? So dead animals, can you genotype dead sires or just
Can you genotype dead sires? So,
get the information to identify the sire of these
so the key is whether the current sire of that cow has been genotyped. So a lot of the sires who have been genotyped, they themselves are dead and have been gone for a long time. But through the semen that's available, they've been genotyped. And what we see is that if you go back, say, I don't know, 5 years to the present, basically all of the bulls that are going through the system have been genotyped. And then if you go back, say, 6 years, probably 95% of them have been genotyped. You go back 8 years, 90% of them have been genotyped. So soon we'll be in the position where basically all of the AI sires that are producing offspring will be genotyped. So right now, for that older cow that's dead, it's more closer to that 50-50 chance of whether we'll be able to, whether the sire himself has been genotyped, and if he is, we can find it. Yeah.
Would you recommend a epigenetics test for like the gene expression? So if your chip tells you you've got the genome that you want, but it doesn't look like it's phenotypically expressing it, would you recommend doing like a quantitative PCR of some sort? Just a way to like see if it's even being expressed, the gene, even though it says it's got it.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, that's basically what we're doing when we record the actual performance of the animals.
Yes.
So here's the genetic value, and then you're talking about epigenetics, whether those genes, the animal has those genes. It's really a question whether they've been turned on or turned off. So sure.
Or do you have any
No, I don't know any procedure. I was wondering maybe you did.
Ideas, but no real, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
If you could go back to the slide where you cull against parent average, and instead of culling 5, cull 15 for us.
Tell me when to stop. Quite a ways.
There.
Yeah.
As opposed to culling 5, cull 15 there. Which other 10 would you take out?
Well, so what I was trying to illustrate is here is that this is our initial parent average. We get the genomic information. So some of them are actually turning out to be, here's one that's much better than its pedigree prediction. Here's one that's much worse than its pedigree prediction. So the green line actually is a combination of both the pedigree information and the genomic test. Maybe I didn't make that clear. So the green is really the right total answer. So then you just go across and you try to find the 5 lowest green circles, which are these 5. And what's that telling me is that, yeah, I'm still culling some of the original 5 that I thought to, but here's an animal that I never would have thought that I should have culled, and I'm now deciding that based on the genomic information, she has much lower prediction of genetic merit than I knew about.
Yeah, I understand that, but you've still got some on the left that are low, but they're performing above parent average. Would you cull them as opposed to the ones further in the middle?
No, I mean, these are the ones that I would cull. And that one there, the genomic information has moved her up, so she's no longer one of the bottom 5 animals.
I think he's asking if you're going to cull 4 or 5 more.
Oh,
You pick up some of those.
sure. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't, yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, you know, as I mentioned, the more opportunity you have to cull, so if you have the opportunity to go from 5 animals to 10 animals, you're going to be, yeah, you're going to be picking up those additional ones, culling them, and the overall picture of profitability is much better. Yeah.
On the reliability change on the green versus the blue, how big a change is that? Percentage point?
On these reliabilities? So if you look at like milk yield, so the blue ones would have a reliability of about 35%, and the green ones would have a reliability of about 65%. So not only do you have so that's why I say, you know, you have you can cull with more reliability and it's more precise. Yeah.
2013, the bulls, we can test their own bulls.
Correct. Yeah.
Maybe some of the other AI groups are like, they have tough answers. What's going to happen then? Is the price the same? Or is it testing? And then how's that going to work as far as sales high testing?
Yeah, the price will be the same whether you're an AI company or you're an individual breeder. And then certainly there'll be some bulls that will be identified that have high genetic merit that the breeder will want to hold on to. And we'll see some individual breeders marketing semen, and you know, it's a competitive business. So I mean, if you can do it and make money at it, all the best. But I think that still we'll see individual farmers testing their own bulls and deciding whether to keep them, sell them to AI, and maybe even just the use of natural service or collecting some semen themselves, and there will be all sorts of different scenarios. But the prices will be the same as far as testing them. I would imagine they'll, these AI companies will give you 20 times more than they do today. Right, Charlie? or I'm sorry, Charlie said 1/20th of what they. Yeah, no, that's kind of hard to tell.
I've got a question about the value of the DHI records and milking systems that collect milk yield and the genomic giving you reliability of components. Is there a danger that somebody like me that spends, $4,000 or $5,000 on DHI testing will rely on genomics instead and just go with my own system and use the genomics on the components?
Yeah, I think there is a danger. We've been trying to think about that. We've been trying to anticipate what kind of changeover there would be from regular recording to genomic testing and relying more on the genomic test. And it's hard to predict, but I would think that maybe there would be a 20% decrease in DHI, and certainly part of that decrease is going to come from reduced progeny testing. So the AI companies won't be giving incentives to farmers to do DHI testing, so we do anticipate a drop-off.
But the other part of it, is there going to be any attempt to collect that on-farm data that's not part of the official, but it's all being recorded by the machinery as it's happening?
Yeah.
It would be available online, and farmers can access it like on a robotic system.
Right. No, I think that, yeah, genomic testing is, it's changing the industry, and we're going to, if you're right, and we move along and we have a decrease in the amount of information that we have, the geneticists will have to continually look at how much information is coming in and does it provide us with the accurate genetic evaluations and accurate information to keep the genomic predictions of the future going. If it comes to a point where the amount of volunteer information that's coming in doesn't meet that need, then collectively, I think, yeah, the U.S. genetic industry will say, we need to figure out a way to pay farmers to collect information, to put it into the system, to keep the genomic predictions going, and we'll have to be kind of creative in how we do that. But the bottom line is that we definitely need a continual supply of actual new performance on the offspring of these new genomic animals each generation down the line. And whether we can get that free, like we have in the past, or whether we'll have to pay for that information, still kind of questionable. Yeah.
Obviously, you work for the Holstein Association. You've studied Holsteins, but do some of these same things hold true for other breeds, varieties, or crossbred animals?
Yeah, it holds very much true for Jerseys, I would say, and then maybe a little bit less for Brown Swiss. And the only reason I say it that way is because if you look at the reliabilities that you get back after genomic testing, the Holstein population just has a bigger reference population, so the reliabilities tend to be higher. Jerseys is a little bit lower, Brown Swiss is a little bit lower. But over time, those breeds will have the exact same results in this study. I'm actually expecting in a very short period of time that these results will be even more favorable for genomic testing because the reliabilities that we see in the Holstein breed will increase, and the same situation for the other breeds.
And what about farmers that practice crossbreeding?
Yeah, crossbreeding, that's a good question. I was going to have some introductory slides more on the biology of it, but all of this is working because we have genetic markers that are spread across the chromosomes of the cow, and so we're picking up a lot of good information on which animals are more related to one another, and it's all within breed specific. And what's going to be necessary for these crossbreed evaluations is that when we have a lot of animals with that high density chip that 770,000 chip. Then we'll be able to narrow in more on the actual gene that's causing these changes, and be able to say, well, this gene is working the same in Holstein, and it's going to be working the same in Jerseys and Brown Swiss. So then when you look at the crosses, you'll be able to predict what a crossbred animal will do. But we're not at that point right now. Yeah, Cheryl.
One of the things that we've noticed is reliability really vary from commercial dairy to commercial dairy on the parent average reliability. What was the parent average reliability you used in the simulation model?
It was pretty much that wherever I had the slide that had my reliabilities up there. So for a trait like milk production, it would be 60% reliability, and that would be for yeah. Oh, on the parent average, it would be for an animal that has both parents identified, it would be 35%. If it was just the sire who was identified, it would be 30%. And of course, if you didn't know either one, it would be 0%. So we tried to include that into the analysis. Yeah.
I was going to mention, when you talked about biotechnology advancing, my idea was like maybe doing a chromatin immunoprecipitation to get the expressibility of the gene, but that would be not cost effective. But if it's cheaper and more readily available, that would be an idea maybe to go ahead with. So when you asked me like what ideas I had, I was like, well, nothing realistic. So that is the whole idea of biotechnology becoming more available and dependent.
Yeah. I'm sure that Select Sires will be looking for a speaker next year, so if you're ready, just.
I just sound professional.
Okay. Yeah.
Will the cost of this testing be going down even more?
It hasn't gone down enough. Yeah, I think that there is the opportunity for it to change, and part of it is we've seen a dramatic decrease in the prices from technology, advances in technology. Probably the next thing that's going to drive a change in price is just the volume. So right now, what we're looking at is as far as the females, we're genomically testing about 5,000 Holstein animals, females per month. So if this were to be used as routine herd management, I mean, we could be looking at 50,000 per month, and that would drive the cost down. So yeah, I think the cost will continue to come down. At what bottom line, you talk to Kurt Van Tassel, he says, $1. No, he doesn't say that, but he's very, very optimistic in how much the price will come down. Nate.
Tom, you showed a couple of scenarios with different strategies for genomic testing, and one of the takeaways could be the importance or the value of complete and accurate identification.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's something that rang through on many of your slides. You didn't mention it specifically, but there you did mention at the end that the right strategy, if you're only going to cull maybe 10% of your animals, might be to only genomic test 30%. But of course, that's on the basis of having complete and accurate identifications,
right,
which is maybe the most important thing to identify what your right strategy is.
Right. Yeah. So the question that I had earlier was, if you're culling 10%, how many should you genotype? And I said, well, 30%. And Nate's absolutely right that you can save a lot of money and improve your profitability by having good pedigree information that then goes into the genomic evaluations. Because if that information was missing, the only thing you could do is genotype 100% because you don't know anything about them. So right, it goes hand in hand. Thanks. Yeah.
When can the genomic testing function as an official parent's test for
Well, my colleague here is in the audience, but I think that we actually have started on last Monday, that if you do genomic testing through the Holstein Association, that will qualify as parentage testing. So that hasn't really been made a big announcement yet, but that's what's being done internally, and Dan's nodding his head, so we're there. There'd be a slight fee, as they say. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just looking at your numbers there, there was a break point where it turned negative, and so it probably would pay to test a whole lot more if the price came down just a little bit.
Yeah, everything, you know, was done here. You know, the two key assumptions was I was using the 3K test, and it was $40 per test. But these results are going to look better with the 6K results, and certainly they would look even better if it was $35 a test as opposed to 40. So everything is kind of time dependent. Phil.
Can I ask you a question, Tom, about population management?
Population management.
In general, and that would benefit the producer, of course, at the bottom end. Do you see that genomic testing being used as a primary tool in population management in terms of broadening genetic base of any breed, in managing co-ancestry?
Yeah, that's a very fancy way of saying, do you think genomic testing will narrow our breed, or and what? and what maybe?
The risk involved could be in narrowing, because you had that nice picture of a bull jumping a hurdle.
Yeah, that was a cow.
That hurdle gets higher all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well.
But you one of the things you did say was you may identify new animals, new genes, new genetic pictures that would bring new unknown animals into the top groups.
Yeah. I think, you know, the simple answer is if we just do genomic testing, everything's going to be happening faster. So inbreeding will increase faster. So how do you avoid that? Well, you avoid it by, like you're saying, by having different populations that are selecting in the same direction but aren't all that related to one another. So I would imagine that, you know, if you look at other species, you know, they have different lines of poultry or different lines of swine that they try to keep separated so that when they cross them, you know, you have unrelated animals that are coming together. And we don't really have that, anything like that today, but we have different countries, we have different companies within the countries. So I think that's probably where some of those decisions will be made. You know, one breeding company is going to purposely try to keep their animals more unrelated to somebody else, and you will see more of that happening.
We heard, both of us heard quite an eminent speaker say that they, in Ireland, that they're actually going to create specific or identify specific herds in order to try to keep these lines separate in case by going faster there may be risks involved.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things is that how much can you say, and how much will anybody listen to what you say? So, you know, one of the things is if you get a popular bull, everybody wants to use that popular bull. If you get 3 popular bulls, everybody wants to use those 3 popular bulls. So if you were the breeding czar, you'd say, well, that's not a good thing to do. So I'm going to say that you, and you get to use these 3 popular bulls, and you, and you don't, you know. So I think I should be given that authority, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we're going to have to be more creative on what makes sense for each person to do. And like I said, probably they'll decide that you know, certain companies will decide that they want to have their breeding lines unique, more unique and different from somebody else's. All right.
Any other question for Dr. Lawler?
Yeah, well,
You're trying to control a certain thing.
right. So the sex semen, one of the advantages of using sex semen is obviously you get a lot more heifers. So that means you can identify, say, 70% of your animals that you're going to use for breeding to high genetics to produce replacement animals. The other 30% you may be using cheaper semen or beef semen and market those animals. So that's where that 30% culling came in. So it's going to be a lot more profitable to use genomic testing when you're using sex semen. That's good. So combining these different technologies is going to be a very good thing to do.
Okay, let's give Tom one last round of applause. We appreciate your attendance today. The last several years here at World Air Expo.